Right, this is a lump of Wealden clay. And today we're going to be planting our potatoes, and the way we're going to be using our potatoes is they are going to do all the work in digging this particular bed. Okay, now I'm lucky enough to live on virtually everything is Wealden clay. Alright, there's clay everywhere, and it is next to impossible to work with. So rather than me putting back-breaking effort into digging my garden, I'm going to be getting the potatoes that we're going to be planting today to do all of the work. Okay, so what we've done is we filled this whole trench that I dug out earlier with horse manure. We've got tons of the stuff, what with them being in the field for a few months. And we're going to be sitting our potatoes on top of basically raw horse manure. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the lumps that we've got, fill it in as much as we can, pile on plenty more manure or any other stuff that we've got around, and then let the potatoes do their work. So what we'll get on with is putting the potatoes in the row now, and then we'll start filling it in. Right, so the potatoes we're going to be putting in the ground, they're first earlies. They're called Mayan Gold. Okay, it's one of my most favourite potatoes. It makes a really firm, waxy yellow flesh. It's got a fantastic taste, great for roasting and general usage. Now, I've been chitting these potatoes for the last few weeks, and as you can see, they're now starting to sprout in various places. Nice firm purple shoots, not too long and leggy if they've been hidden away from the light. You want to chit your potatoes, keep them in a cool, dry, frost-free place, but with plenty of light, so you get nice strong buds forming. Now, some potato growers take off a number of the shoots, okay, just to end up with 3 or 4 really strong shoots. Now what I'm just going to leave these. I generally don't place too much effort in chitting my potatoes. I just want the shoots, and we'll start laying these along the bed. Now what we'll do is place them about 6, 8, 10 inches apart, okay, just like that. And I'll lie them down on their side, nice and comfy, even in places where the clay has dropped down back into the trench, which is probably 4 to 6 inches deep. There's still a good load of manure underneath that. So I'll just walk backwards away from the camera and lay these potatoes in their hole. Okay, it's a good lump of manure sitting on there. Now I bought 2 kilos of these Mayan Golds, and this is all of it we've got here. We'll see how much of this row we can do. I'm hoping it will stretch all the way. I think it will. There's lots of manure here. Tons of the stuff, in fact. Now some people don't plant their potatoes so close together. I think it's totally up to you. Obviously if they're too close they won't produce as good enough harvest, but you've got to work with the space you've got. Okay, that's the end of that row. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to fill these buckets with a bit of extra manure and pile that on top of the potatoes we've already got in the ground, give them lots of lovely food. You can follow me, if you like, to my compost pile. So we've had some horses in our field for the last few weeks, last few months, and they've managed to produce tons and tons of manure, we're now going to use to feed our potatoes. We're going to use it to feed loads of our vegetables actually. So I'm not too worried that this isn't that rotted. A lot of plants can't take raw horse manure, but potatoes are perfectly capable of dealing with it, and they will thrive on it. So I'll fill these buckets up. You can watch me rather than the poo. This is not the most attractive of stuff. Doesn't smell, fortunately. I've got plenty of this to get through. I'm not worried about it being coarse, not worried about it being rough. This is just a nice, soft mattress for the potatoes to sit in whilst we get through the worst of the winter. A bit of grass in there, not worried about that. That cockerel in the background is called Satan, and you generally want to avoid him, but we'll be seeing Satan and the other chickens in a later programme. Right, they're nearly filled up. Carry those. We'll do it 2 at a time. Right, whew. Right, they're heavy, but now what we're going to do is we're going to tip them into the trench that we've got, just to cover up the potatoes. Is what we're going to do after this. I just want to make sure the potatoes don't get damaged. We just cover them up. That's great. Next one. Hopefully these small buckets will be plenty for this row. Now if you've got a compost heap in your garden, you'll know that potatoes grow anywhere and any time, so when you put potatoes in the compost, they grow through that compost even though it's hot and rich. So my expectation is my potatoes will grow really well through that. Now these are first earlies, they're early potatoes at least, and I like to grow early potatoes because I generally want to get my potatoes working the ground and then clearing it for a second crop in the same patch, and that's generally something that's going to be really happy with the soil that's been broken up. Doesn't need too much nutrition. Going to be happy to grow later on in the year, salads, what have you. Okay, let's just use the rest of that up. Good. Okay, so the next thing to do is basically take the rest of this soil, and what we'll do is we'll just pile it over onto this trench. And I've just realised I've left my spade back at the compost heap, so what we'll do is we'll go and get that and then cover it over. So something I'm going to put on the manure and on the soil today, it's not something a lot of people would use, something that was used very extensively many years ago when we all burnt coal fires, and that is coal ash. Now coal ash contains a lot of sulphur, and what the sulphur does is it helps fight fungal infections in the soil and also provides a micronutrient, which is sulphur obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sieve this coal ash just across the ground. I've already put a bit of ash on earlier, but I'm just going to sieve this onto the top of that manure, and that will just help deal with any of the possible fungal infections that might exist just as a result of being in the soil, and help prevent any blight or anything else getting in contact with the potatoes. So we'll get this. Okay, so my sieve has magically appeared on the ground. Now I'm just going to put this ash. We don't want the big lumps of coal in, we just want the ash. So just making lots of dusty dust everywhere. Just sieve it over, plenty there. I'll just dump this old coal in here. That's it. That'll go in the barbecue or fire pit, gradually burn down over time. Put the rest in. Goodness knows what's in there. Smell the salt, actually. Right. What a mess. So I'm sure on many other gardening channels, gardening shows, people's potato beds and potato plots don't look anything like that. They're much cleaner. They don't grow on clay. They seem to seemingly grow on cake mix. So when you're growing on clay and you've got plenty of manure, the best way of sorting out a bed for future growing is to let the potatoes do the work for you. And then over time you'll end up with a bed that produces soil similar to this. Now, I've grown potatoes on here before. I've been feeding this with additional bits of compost from my other compost heap, and in a few months time when these potatoes are up and we're harvesting them, we'll have a look at the state of that soil and what we do with it next. So let's get the spade and start putting big lumps on top. Now you'll see some of the gaps still got weeds in this soil. One of the great things about potatoes is they don't care about weeds. They'll outcompete pretty much anything, and so generally don't weed too much. I'm one of those gardeners that doesn't have a huge amount of time on his hands, so I have to do what's necessary to get my crop and let the plants do the work for me wherever I can. So we're just going to cover that over. Buttercups, they'll get out competed. There's some worms in that soil, they'll be working on that manure in no time. Those big lumps of clay, they'll break down. They're about 8 inches into the soil, 8 to 10 inches. And over time, the worms will take all of those nutrients lower down. Okay. Spray that up. And that should be enough to protect the potatoes from any frosts that may come up in the next few days, or next few weeks even. And as the shoots come through, I'll just gradually pile more and more soil on top, and we'll end up with the standard mound for the potatoes. Okay.